This program was made possible by the law firm of Zalman and Schnorman, whose practice is limited to personal injury and insurance law. Welcome to Lawline with your host, Alan Schnorman. Mr. Schnorman is a distinguished trial attorney, author, and lecturer. Each week, Lawline will bring you the most knowledgeable experts in the field of law today. And now, we introduce our guests and our host, Alan Schnorman.
Welcome to Lawline. A large segment of the population will not need the services of an attorney in the course of their daily lives. They may hire an attorney to buy a house, write a will, or sign a contract. Today we'll speak to two individuals who have more experience than most in dealing with lawyers and get some tips from them on how to choose an attorney. Our guests are Larry Sills, president of Standard Motor Products, a Fortune 500 corporation. Larry comes from a family of attorneys. Our second guest is Fern Hammond. Fern switched attorneys during her divorce and as a real estate broker works with attorneys on a regular basis. Hello, Larry. Hello, Fern.
Hello, Alan.
Larry, give us an idea. What do you use? How do you select a lawyer? You deal with lawyers every single day.
Every day, unfortunately. We are usually the defendant. And I guess the type of lawyer that you pick is a function of the nature of the case. We're sued for various different things, and I think every person in business tends to be sued for various different things. Well, do you select the first lawyer you see, or do you interview 2 or 3 lawyers? Well, I'll give you an example. We have a distribution center in Virginia. How many employees do you have, by the way? About 3,500. Okay. And we have about 400 in this warehouse near Richmond. And about a year ago, we got sued in a race discrimination case. We fired a... So how did you select a lawyer in that case? Well, we got to appreciate we're not in Richmond, we're really in New York, so you're at kind of a disadvantage when you're trying to pick a lawyer in a place that you don't really are. So I think we made a basic error. We picked a very big, prestigious law firm in Richmond. How was that an error? That's what's called a white shoes. Why was it an error? We got a true gentleman to represent us. Not a gunslinger. Absolutely. We were up against a gunslinger. And in the first round, we got killed. The gunslinger got us. We lost $1 million judgment. Huge number. Worst thing ever happened to us from a legal point of view. For the appeal, we got rid of the fancy law firm, and now we got a street fighter. And now we're going to try to really do battle. So next time your advice is get yourself, if you're in litigation and being sued, get yourself out. Get a street fighter. Fern, what's been your experience with lawyers? And now I know you've had 2 lawyers during your divorce. What happened during your divorce? How did you select your lawyer and how would you do it today? Oh, very differently, hopefully. My first attorney, during my divorce, I got referrals from friends, went to see several attorneys, and chose someone that 2 other attorneys had referred to me. And after a few visits, she asked me who had referred me, and 2 people had referred me. Then I found out that the 2 attorneys were fighting over the referral fees. Let's see if I understand this. You were retaining an attorney, and then that attorney had to send a portion of their fee back to these attorneys who referred. Right. Okay. So right away I thought, well, now I know why I was referred here. I chose a female attorney, and I know a lot of women feel during their divorce they look for a female attorney, and maybe they feel that the female attorney will be more of a gunslinger for them. But I found my female attorney to be more chauvinistic than most of the male attorneys I went to. And what happened? Not much. There was no depositions, no discovery, about 8 months of little bits and pieces of negotiations. And my ex-husband had never answered the divorce papers, and I finally fired her after about 8 months. And how did you choose the second attorney? Pretty much the same way. I asked people that I knew, and I ended up hiring the ex-partner of my ex-husband's attorney. Interesting. How'd that work out? It was another gunslinger theory. I thought they would know each other well enough, and he would know how to combat
Did you want this case settled? Is that what you had in mind, or did you want a drag-out fight?
No, I wanted the case settled.
Okay. Any children involved?
Yes, I have a daughter.
Okay. So what happened on the second one?
Well, on the second one, it was about 2 years of not much of anything. Half of a deposition taken, and after 3 years of that, I pretty much folded and settled.
Well, did you feel that you folded and settled by you were just worn out, worn down?
I was worn out, and I had a legal bill that was equal to more than my divorce settlement.
Larry's shaking his head, yes, 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 you know about that. Talk to me, Larry.
Well, this is what people have against lawyers, right?
Do you find sometimes that your lawyer actually becomes your adversary because of the bill?
Well, I think the system kind of sets it up. The system creates the environment where the lawyer becomes the fees for the lawyer become such a big part of the total picture that you have to pay attention to it. You can't, you forget the merits of the case, and all of a sudden your legal bill becomes the biggest single factor in the case, and it shouldn't be, but it is.
How much do lawyers charge you, Larry, on an hourly basis?
I would hate to think.
$100, $200?
$250, $200, $250.
An hour?
An hour. And
when you have a big firm, maybe 3 or 4 lawyers are working on the case at once?
That's right. You look at those hours sitting around, and they just pile up, and they pile up, and they pile up, and they pile up.
If they have lunch, do they bill you?
They bill us for everything.
And you're not the only one.
Right, right. And so when you're faced with this big legal bill, it affects your judgment. And even though you think you're right, and you think you have a good case, and you say, my God, it's going to cost me so much to argue the case, that you say, the hell with it.
You settle?
We'll settle.
Is that what you do as a major corporation? You settle more times than not?
We've started to.
Because it's cheaper in the long run?
Right. Which is wrong, but that's what you tend to do.
Fern, what's your advice now, first to women out there who are in the midst of a divorce, or are getting a divorce, or are thinking about getting divorced? How should they go about getting a lawyer if they don't know one right now?
Well, I guess if they're thinking about getting a divorce, they should immediately go to as many of the top attorneys as they can, so their husbands or ex-husbands-to-be cannot go to those attorneys.
Interesting. In other words, if you are interviewing a lawyer...
Once he's seen you, he cannot represent the other party.
Interesting strategy. What else?
I would say not to choose the person, the attorney whose office you go into who promises you everything. They're selling themselves so hard. I feel that that's what they're doing to everyone. They're going to have a ton of clients, and you will get no attention. You'll just get hot air, a lot of hot air, and nothing done on your case. And then again, not to choose somebody who seems so laid back that they're not going to do something for you. Go middle of the road, somebody who seems very realistic.
Well, how does a client know this? How do you know it?
Oh, it's very hard for someone during their divorce, because I think a lot of women are looking for their attorney to be their white knight and do battle for them. And that's just not the case.
Larry, how important is it that you go into a law office and it's a gorgeous law office and it's a fancy desk and you're laughing? How important is that to you?
Well, I would give that a negative benefit. You see all that, you say, oh my God, this is going to be expensive. So
you're going to be paying for it.
You're darn right. So you're looking for a little shabby little.
Fern, you were laughing.
I disagree. That's why I say you go middle of the road. You want someone who's certainly successful enough to have a nice office, yet maybe not someone who needs to pump you to make the new payment on his 200-foot yacht.
Well, how is it important to go for a large firm as opposed to a small firm? Or a single practitioner as opposed to a 20-man firm?
Well, I would choose a small firm, because I think a single practitioner can be very dangerous.
What's a small firm? How many attorneys?
15 attorneys.
And when you say can be very dangerous, what do you mean?
Well, if you just have one person working on your case and they have many other cases, you can really get lost in the shuffle. If something happens to that attorney, if they have a personal disaster, you're left out in the cold.
Larry, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I would agree with that. I think you'd kind of get lost in the shuffle in a giant firm, but a one-person operation is just no good either. So you want someone in the middle. But again, our situation, we're always being sued. And so what you want...
All the lawyers out there, listen to this.
Right. I'm paying for all the lawyers out there. We're always being sued. And we're usually being sued in places that we don't live, where nobody knows us. Right. And where we are...
And here you're this major Fortune 500 corporation.
We are the big outside evil New York company up against this poor, humble, local individual who's been wronged.
Right.
And so, for one thing, is you sure don't want somebody from New York defending you. You want somebody local. You want somebody
With
who
the right
has
accent.
connections, who speaks with the right accent, who
knows the
knows his
judge.
way around, who knows the judge, who knows the local politicians. This is what you need.
How do you find that lawyer?
It's not so easy. We'll use our New York firm to help us, but that's how we wound up with this
Big firm.
Big firm, which because they know the big ones, they don't know the little ones.
Right.
So after we got clobbered, we looked around and we tried to find one that was more suited to what we could use.
Larry, when you go interviewing an attorney, what do you look for?
Well, I guess again, it depends on the case, but I think right now we've really changed our viewpoint. We really want to have a fighter. I want someone out there who is going to defend us aggressively, which is too bad because the system has kind of set up this confrontational thing. We only want one like that because the other side's got one like that. It's like we need our Scud missile against the other guy's Scud missile.
But how
I would much prefer you didn't have to do that.
How do you know, as a client, to paraphrase what Fern said, that the lawyer who's in front of that desk is not full of hot air?
Boy, it's tough. You're
But he's
going
not
on
selling you
reputation. You're going
a
on
bag of
reputation.
goods.
You ask other people what their experience was. It's not easy. It's not easy. You try to look at the record. It's not easy. Again, I'm surrounded by lawyers, so we have my family, my friends, everybody I know is a lawyer. You have a little bit of insight into that, but it's not easy. It's not easy.
I understand that. Fern, give us in a business relationship. Now, you're a real estate broker. I know you're also involved in a landlord-tenant matter. How do you go select a lawyer for that type of matter, a commercial matter?
Well, I usually don't refer attorneys in real estate, but I deal with a lot of them.
Is it true I've heard
closing.
more attorneys break deals than make deals?
They are known as deal breakers, yes.
Why is that?
Well, I'm not really sure why it is, but they'll pick over.
He's shaking his head, yes.
They'll pick over a contract for no good reason at all, except that we ascertain perhaps they want to earn their fee. And I start down in the basement anyway, right off the bat with the attorney because I'm the broker.
Right.
And the broker's making more on the transaction than the attorney's making on the closing.
Right.
And that's usually resented.
Especially here in New York City, if you sell a $500,000 apartment, your fees are like $30,000 brokerage fee.
That's right. So many times I'll have an attorney tell the customer, the client, that they're paying too much for the apartment. Now, this man has not been out on the market, hasn't seen anything, and he'll right away say, you're overpaying for the apartment. They'll look over co-op plans and tell them that a building is only 80% sold, it should be 100% sold. I mean, all these things are perfectly acceptable. And the attorneys sometimes do not really know.
You mean they're being extra cautious?
And not even being extra cautious. I don't think they're really aware of
What's happening?
of what's going on.
Larry, now I know you're.
I have a story.
You have a story. I know
Yeah.
you do contracts all day long,
Yes.
or you do every time you sell a product or buy a product, it's a contract.
We bought a small company about 5 years ago. And we bought it was a small division of a very big company. So they had a big fancy law firm.
Right.
It was a very simple transaction. We were basically buying the inventory, and that's it, right? One thing, you would think 2 paragraphs, you could do the whole deal. By the time we were finished, I think it was 130 pages long.
Who would read all that stuff?
Nobody could read. Ironically, they left out the most important thing, it turns out, afterwards. But
right.
at 130 pages,
they still left it out.
They left out what was really crucial. But 130 pages of trying to think in advance of anything that could conceivably happen. And then we argued about it.
Right.
And then they would write it. Then they would think of something else. And then they would argue about it. Things that had almost no
sounds like
chance
it
of
took more
ever
than one
happening.
day. I mean, how long did
Oh,
this
it went
take?
on for weeks and weeks. And by the time it was done, it was this thick. And of course, they ran up this gigantic bill, which was well over $100,000
Really?
for a very simple deal.
Okay, we'll get more.
That started with
we
my
have to take a
feeling
break
about
now, but
lawyers
we'll
now.
discuss more how to select your lawyer right after this break.
All right.
I'm Alan Schnorman, your host. You're watching Lawline. Stay with us.
The air dances with the waters, which brings the rain that feeds the land, that is home to the animals. All life dances together.
In a world
world so connected, choosing one environmental cause can be hard. EarthShare is 40 environmental charities working together. You and your company can help by calling 1-800-MY-SHARE.
All life lives, or doesn't, together.
Excuse me. Do you wear your safety belt?
Why, no. I don't wear my safety belt.
Thank you.
You could learn a lot from a dummy. Buckle your safety belt.
Hello, I'm Alan Schnorman, your host. You're watching Lawline. Today we're talking about how to choose an attorney and how clients feel about lawyers. If you're a lawyer, listen to this. You may want to know here about it. We have Larry Sills, president of Standard Motor Products, and Fern Hammond, a real estate broker. Both people deal with lawyers all the time. Larry, tell us, how do you feel about lawyers?
One word.
This only have 15 minutes left.
I know. Tell us your truth. Don't hold back.
Well, I guess I have a bit of a negative feeling.
Why?
Well, I guess
you said your whole
mostly
family
because
of lawyers.
I'm surrounded by lawyers, but I guess for the most part, I'm on the receiving end of what other lawyers do to me. So I guess you can't help but do it. If I might, I watched your program a few months ago. You had on, I guess he was the head of the Bar Association, and the subject was, why do people not like lawyers? And he says, oh, people should like lawyers. Why? Because they work on contingency fees. I said, that's exactly backwards. I started yelling at the television set.
You did?
I said, that's why people don't like lawyers.
Here for.
That's why people don't like lawyers, because of the contingency fee situation. The sense is that because of that, they go out looking for business. They go out looking to create suits where none would exist. The act of the contingency fee creates the environment where these people go out and look for cases. And since I'm usually on the receiving end of these things, that's why I have this
Of course, you would have to agree, those people who are poor, those people who are working people, perhaps could not afford
Correct.
the high-priced lawyers that you could afford.
Right.
So the contingency fee certainly avails themselves of that. Fern, tell me, how do you feel about lawyers?
I'd say my feelings also negative for the most part.
Tell us
in
why.
business. Well, for my divorce experience in Baltimore, and I was the bad girl from New York, as you're the big business from New York, against a local boy in Baltimore, because I was divorced down there. And I went to see about 8 or 9 divorce attorneys, because this is before I chose one. I didn't know who to choose.
And you still chose the wrong one.
And I still chose. And then when I went to the second one, I chose the wrong one. But each attorney had known that I'd been to the other's office.
How'd they know that?
Well, I guess they all talk. And it got to my ex-husband also. He knew which attorneys I'd been to. He knew actually most of the things I'd said to the attorneys that I'd been to.
That's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable. And I had a very strange experience up in one attorney's office. He went to the bathroom and came back with his fly unzipped. And I didn't say anything. And I had spoken about it to a friend of mine who had referred me there, and she told me that the same thing had happened when she was in his office. And the only thing that we could figure out was that he did it just to see how we would react to it. He was quite odd, and that put me off of him immediately. In real estate, I've had people attorneys break deals. I had last year a situation where somebody bid on an apartment they loved. The attorney told him not to buy it because there was no subletting allowed in the building. Now, in most pre-war buildings, there is no subletting allowed. And so the gentleman did not go through with the contract. It's a year later. We're still looking for a similar apartment. And the apartment that he could have bought for $565, which is what we were in contract for, is now probably $675 a year later.
So obviously that wasn't the right decision.
It certainly wasn't the right decision.
Larry, if you could speak directly to all these lawyers which you basically have mixed feelings.
I don't have mixed feelings.
What would you say to them? All the lawyers that are watching the show right now, and perhaps your lawyer.
I would say to be gentle and be kind. To realize that that what comes around goes around, and just to try to understand that they're part of a society and they're not out to get this one big hit. They got to take a bit of a broader view. That's what I would like to give them, that message.
If the lawyers who represented you and the lawyers that you interviewed and this lawyer who came back from the bathroom, as you just discussed, what would you want to say to those lawyers?
Well, I have to tell you, I don't think it's worth saying. I wouldn't feel it would be worth saying anything to them.
Well, what would your advice be to these attorneys regarding how they should treat their future clients?
Well, if they could change their personalities, I would say take on what you can handle it well, and I guess...
Do you feel lawyers have this big ego that just walks into the room in front of them?
I think most of them do.
Larry?
Well, I think we're blaming the messenger. I don't think it's the lawyer who's at fault. I think it's the system and the society that's at fault. Let me try to explain. I used to, I've thought about this some. I used to live in Africa and I've studied anthropology. And I noticed a difference. If you're walking down a road in Africa and a tree...
This is when you were in the Peace Corps?
Well, I read that in your biography. For Pfizer. I used to work for Pfizer. I was in Africa. I was there for a couple of years. And if you're walking down the road and a tree hits you on the head, you say to yourself, you don't say it was just bad luck or a random accident or anything. You say, somebody did that to me. I was jujued, which is the word. It's black magic did it, and I got to find out who did it. I'm going to get even. That's what happens in Africa. In America, if you walk down the street and a tree hits you on the head, you also don't say, gee, that's just bad luck. It's just a random occurrence. You say, who do I sue? Somebody's got to pay for this. It has to be somebody's fault. I'm going to sue. So it's not, the lawyer is just acting out his role in this situation. The problem is, yeah, it's our whole, there's no sense of just random accident or individual responsibility. It's got to be anything bad that happens, it's somebody's fault.
Larry
somebody's
Seals,
going to pay for it.
You are president of a major Fortune 500 corporation, and I understand where you're coming from.
Good.
However, wouldn't you agree that there must be some sort of regress if a product is made and it's made improperly or dangerously, that a consumer who's injured by that product must have a right to, if he feels that the company was negligent, to bring an action?
It's a matter of degree. It's a matter of degree.
Ah, really? Is it a matter of interest and money?
No. It's a matter of degree. One should not assume, I think, that a product is perfect, that a service is perfect, and that if the person who's giving the service, like a doctor, or the person who's making the product, has to be perfect, and if it's not perfect, then someone has to pay. Obviously, gross negligence should be compensated for. An honest mistake should not be compensated for, and somewhere in between is the right answer. But not every single thing that happens bad equals a lawsuit.
Only if, again, if a jury finds that the company made a wrong product, supplied a negligent service, or something of that nature. But let's go on to basically the topic of the show.
Okay. I want to answer the jury.
I understand.
See, I don't think the jury deals with right and wrong. I think the jury deals with emotion. And as I've heard anyone say, on the other side, all I want to do is get in front of the jury. That's all I want to do. Because I know once I get in front of the jury, I win. Right and wrong doesn't enter into it. It's the poor individual against the big company, and that's...
Let's just address that last topic.
Surely.
Your company manufactures motor parts, is that correct?
Right.
And if an action is brought against your corporation, usually it's because they feel that those motor parts were made negligently.
Exactly.
I assume
right.
that's correct.
That's
and
correct.
Wouldn't you agree sometimes they are made negligently?
Every so often.
Because if you make thousands of parts, sometimes one part doesn't work out just like you wanted it to.
Right.
And if that person is injured because of that, wouldn't you agree they may very well have a cause of action against you? And that's why you pay insurance.
Right.
All right. Fern, let's go back to rapport between you and the attorney, just to lighten up the subject, if you may. Because there's nobody here for you to debate, so I figured I better have a word in here edgewise. Well, how important is this rapport between you and the lawyer?
I guess it depends on what type of situation it is. I think with a divorce attorney, you do need a rapport, but you should try, as hard as it is in that situation, to to be unemotional and to look at it as a business and to make sure that you get your bills, look over your bills, question your bills, make sure your attorney's taking your calls.
How important is it to have your attorney be a specialist only in that area? If you have a real estate problem, only go to a real estate lawyer.
I think it's very important.
And how do you know that lawyer really is a specialist?
Well,
he may tell you he's a specialist, or she may say, that's all I do.
That's something I think you can only learn by asking around and getting referrals and making sure you're going, and maybe even speaking to the court clerks.
So you'd rather go, if you had a matrimonial, only go to a lawyer with a matrimonial question. If you have a negligence case, only go to a lawyer who only does negligence?
Absolutely.
How do you feel about that, Larry?
Yeah, I guess I agree with that.
And
I can't argue with you on that.
You can't argue. Do you only use specialists in your field? When you need a lawyer for contracts, you only use a lawyer who does contracts? Or do you use a GP, a general practitioner?
We use, I guess we use a mixture. But I would think that, and I think that's to our disadvantage, frankly. I think if we would use specialists, we would do better. The benefit of the generalist is he knows your companies. He kind of knows how you think. But I think, for example, we're being sued environmentally, which we never used to be. So now I need someone who's got environmental experience, which is a whole new field.
Fern, I'd love to ask this question. If I gave you the power of the legislature, if I gave you the power of the chief judge of the state of New York, how would you organize lawyer conduct to change it? Quickly?
Oh, that's really a tough one.
Larry.
I can't answer that question.
I would do away with juries.
But what about lawyer conduct? I understand your position on that. What do you think about lawyer conduct?
If you do away with juries, then the lawyer has to act differently. The lawyer then has to deal with the facts of the law.
That's only with jury trials, though.
Right, matrimonials aren't jury trials.
90% of the time they're not.
Right.
So everything is done in negotiating over the telephone.
So again, how would you change this lawyer
Well,
conduct?
there probably have to be an overseeing body, maybe with caps on fees.
He's shaking his head yes.
Things would have to be done within a certain time frame, such as full disclosure, depositions.
Full control over your client, right? You want full control. Do you want to control your case?
I think it's a mistake to try to control your case completely, but I think you have to watch it every step of the way.
Okay, and with that, thank you very much, Larry Sills, President of Standard Motor Products, a Fortune 500 corporation, and thank you very much, Fern Hammond. Obviously, you had a vast experience with lawyers, and as always, this is Alan Schnorman, and thank you for watching Lawline, especially if you're a lawyer.
You have been watching Lawline with your host, New York trial attorney Alan Schnorman. Mr. Schnorman will be back with you next week at the same time. If you have any questions about this week's program, please write to Lawline, 63 Wall Street, New York, New York, 10005, or call area code 212-432-9111. This program was made possible by the law firm of Zalman and Schnorman, whose practice is limited to personal injury and insurance law. Welcome to Lawline with your host, Alan Schnorman. Mr. Schnorman is a distinguished trial attorney, author, and lecturer. Each week, Lawline will bring you the most knowledgeable experts in the field of law.